Hi, I'm David Marks. I'm a woodworker from Santa Rosa, California. For those of you that aren't familiar with Santa Rosa, we're up here in the heart of the wine country, just about an hour north of San Francisco. Now some of you guys might know me from the television show that I've hosted called Woodworks. It's appeared on the DIY network for over 6 years now. It's also been on the Home and Garden television show, as well as in Australia on the How To network. Now, I spend a fair amount of time traveling and teaching, and then when I'm not teaching, I'm working here in my studio in Northern California. And I work a lot on various wall sculptures. Now I also have a shop here where I teach. We've got lathes in the background there. We teach classes on wood turning. A lot of the people that I talk to have asked me what kind of projects that I'm working on currently. So I thought I'd do this short video clip and then just show you this wall sculpture that I'm working on right now. Now this is a piece that's 36 inches in diameter, and it's built up in the back. It's got a rim on the back, and this gives it more depth and more of a three-dimensional quality. I've attached this rim, this wedge of Pernambuco, and Pernambuco is a very beautiful exotic wood that comes from Brazil. It's got these deep, dark, rich, rusty orange colors. It's just got a lot of warmth and beauty to it. This particular sculpture I've entitled Time is Relative, and this wedge here symbolizes one of the hands from a clock. Now, as far as the construction goes, all this is kiln-dried poplar hardwood, and I've glued this together with various plate biscuits for joinery, and I've used slow-setting urea resin glue to bond all this together. Now, probably you guys have seen me on Woodworks talking about urea resin glue. I do have an FAQ at my website, djmarks.com. If you go to the FAQ, I describe what this glue is and some of the sources for where you can obtain it. Now in terms of this sculpture, I've got this dome shape in the center, which is going to be covered with a piece of copper, and the rest of this will be covered with some silver leaf. So let's talk about some of the surface treatments. I've got some silver leaf here that I'll show you. Now this is genuine silver. Silver is very, very thin. It's very similar to gold leaf. Gold is a precious metal, and silver is a semi-precious metal. It's beaten very, very thin. So you can just get a sense of how very thin this metal is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare the surface of the sculpture. I'll build up layers of a primer, and then a gesso, and then various layers of Japan paints for background color. Then I'll apply a varnish to the surface, which will become the glue that basically bonds that silver to the surface. Now once I have the silver on the surface, I'll come back with some chemicals and create a beautiful patina on the surface. So let me show you what this is going to look like. Now, what you can see from looking at this is that once I apply the chemicals to the silver, it's going to oxidize the silver and turn it from a silver color into a gold color. It'll go from the gold into kind of a slightly reddish, maybe magenta color. And then from there, it'll tarnish into a teal blue color. Very rich, beautiful surface. So you can imagine, how this sculpture is going to be transformed once it's got that metal on the surface. The other thing I'll be doing is taking a piece of spun copper and I'll apply this to the very center. But before I do, I'm going to etch that surface. So let me show you what this will look like. So this gives you some idea of what that copper in the center will look like. I'll be mixing up ammonium chloride and some copper sulfate, as well as some other chemicals. And what will happen is it's going to etch the surface and give it a beautiful blue-green, kind of a textured pattern to it. So this helps you to visualize what the various color combinations are going to look like with this particular sculpture. Now, as I've mentioned, I haven't finished completely turning it yet. So what I've got to do is take this back over to the lathe and then use my 1/2-inch bowl gouge and then finish turning this piece of Pernambuco and then getting this flush with the surface. So we'll go over to the lathe and I'll show you how that process works. I'm going to be putting on a pair of gloves because sometimes when those chips of wood come off at high speeds, they can be rather abrasive on your hands there. Now this is my large one-way lathe. This is the 2436 model. It's a pretty heavy duty lathe. I also like the Vic Mark lathes, and I got a bunch of those for the classroom as well. Now this one's got an electronic variable speed control, and what I need to do is get this thing mounted onto the outboard spindle. So once I have this balanced up here, then what I can do is to manually turn this thread by hand, and then I'll set the locking device on this and spin this till it locks tight. As I get to the very end, I'll give it an extra spin. So that's on there good and tight. One more thing to be aware of is that there's some set screws. So I just undid the lock. Now I'm going to tighten up these set screws, and this will lock it onto the outboard shaft here. Now something to keep in mind is that I'm basically creating a turning that's out of balance. The weight of this Pernambuco is a lot more denser than the poplar. So I've got this piece that's basically going to be lopsided or out of balance, if you will. So you can just see that this thing's going to constantly want to weight itself down towards the bottom there. Now one of the nice features about the Vic Mark, as well as the one way, and some of the other nicer lathes on the market, is this electronic variable speed control. So when I start this, I can start this at a very, very slow speed. I've got this all the way down here. So we'll see this thing's going at a very, very slow rotation. Now this is very important because when you start off, you want to start off very slowly. What I can do is I can adjust the dial here, and I can turn this up a little bit at a time. And what I'm looking for is I want to see if the offset nature of that sculpture is going to translate into any vibration on the lathe. So I'll turn this up a little bit more. And as I do, I'm going to put my hands on the ways of the bed and then just check to see if there's any vibration going on. If I turn this up too fast, it will start to vibrate, and all I have to do is to simply slow the speed back down. So right about there is my comfort level. That's what we'll be working with. So at this point, I've got an arrow marked on the switch. I'll turn this back down, and I'm going to shut this off. And what I'll do is I'll come over here and move my my tool rest into position. Now this is a tool rest that I've had custom made. And the value of this is that I can turn this just about anywhere on the floor of the shop, and it enables me to turn something that's the full height of the lathe.